Welcome to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's podcast on the big stories in the region. This week I'll be discussing the latest twist in Turkey's orange lighting of Sweden's accession to NATO. The accepted truth is that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan signed off on Sweden's membership of the alliance during its latest summit held in the Lithuanian capital Vilnius earlier this month. In other words, that it's a done deal. Not quite. Erdogan said that he would ask the Turkish parliament, where his party commands a majority, to ratify the agreement. However, he added, the Turkish parliament was going into summer recess, so this probably wouldn't happen before October when it reconvenes. And therein lies the rub. Erdogan has the power to call parliament into session whenever he pleases. So what is holding things up? The answer lies in the US Congress, which has banned foreign military sales to Turkey over its acquisition of Russian S-400 missiles and its invasion of Kurdish-controlled northeastern Syria in 2019. Turkey wants to buy F-16 fighter jets from the United States, but several ranking senators, including Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chair Bob Menendez, say Turkey has to ratify Sweden's accession before it permits the sale. With us here to discuss congressional thinking is Endi Zemenidis, Executive Director of the Hellenic American Leadership Council, a Greek-American organization that among its policy priorities is the America-Greece bilateral relationship. So welcome to our program, Endi.
Thanks for hosting me, Amber, and big fan, great to be with you.
Thanks. Well, the feelings are mutual. So you had this really excellent, incisive piece in Ekathimerini, which is a Greek daily, very prestigious Greek daily, where you say nearly 2 weeks after Vilnius, and after countless headlines declaring deals and discussing details of alleged deals, Sweden is still not a member of NATO. And the administration has not secured the clearance of congressional holds for an F-16 deal to Turkey. So, Andy, it's very weird, though, isn't it, that, when you read the newspapers, when you listen to Western officials, they seem to suggest the opposite, that, Turkey has signed off on Sweden's accession and everything is hunky-dory. So what is actually the state of play? What are you hearing in Washington?
Well, that piece, and if you look at the title, I said cutting through noisy diplomacy. Erdogan has been an expert, as another one of your guests, Howard Eisenstadt, has called him, an expert in noisy diplomacy. And I think we had a lot of that. There was like a tipping point in this process, and I think it was that Sunday evening before the NATO summit call between President Biden and President Erdogan. Clearly, either U.S. Embassy Ankara or the National Security Council, or both, had told Biden, "Hey, Erdogan has signed off. Let's do a call, a congratulatory call," right? Because there would have been no other reason for that call since Biden and Erdogan had a sideline visit at Vilnius, and that call went horribly. That's everybody. It's an open secret in D.C. I think Biden was prepped with congratulatory talking points, probably the same talking points we all heard when he sat down with Erdogan. And Erdogan from the get-go said, "No, Sweden's not ready. And by the way, we have other demands, including you pushing for our EU accession." The very next morning after this call, the Axios lead was about President Biden's hair trigger temper, how often he uses the F-bomb or directs the F-bomb at certain staffers. So we can imagine with amusement who got that treatment after his disastrous call with Erdogan. And then in less than 24 hours, we saw Erdogan, flip and say, okay, Sweden is ready. And we saw really no substantive move. Sweden saying, yes, we'll cheerlead for you within the EU. That's not a substantive move. Sweden has always cheerlead for Turkey's EU accession. So I think there was this clear communication from DC. We won't be able to do anything with you. The or else started coming into focus. Maybe we will cancel the meeting at Vilnius. Maybe we won't even talk to Congress. But let's now think about the mood in Congress, because I think a lot of the writing has focused only on Senator Menendez. Clearly, he is the chair. He is particularly powerful. He's particularly outspoken, and he's been principled. But it seems to me that people are missing the fact that there are 4 holds, all 4, even the two Republicans, the ranking member on the Senate Foreign Relations, Jim Risch, and the House Foreign Affairs Chairman, McCall, they have said, we'll start the conversation once Turkey has signed off, once Sweden is in. Gregory Meeks, the head Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, has actually been closer to Menendez, saying that the Aegean and Turkey's belligerence within NATO is a huge issue for him too. So right now, as we stand, all 4 holds are still on. It's not only the administration versus Menendez. All 4 holds are on. Sweden is not in.
So this is a bit like high noon, where Erdogan wants Congress to go first and say, okay, you can have your F-16s, and Congress is saying, hell no, you have to first sign off on Sweden's membership of NATO. And even then, there may be more asks from our side, because we keep hearing concerns being articulated about Turkey's aggressive behavior, though it's also been noted, indeed, by Greece, the Greek government, that Turkey has sort of halted those overflights over the Aegean Islands. So there is obviously some kind of de-escalation. Then you had the meeting between Erdogan and Mitsotakis in Vilnius, and there's talk of another meeting perhaps in New York, right? So yeah. Do you agree with, it sounds a bit like a conspiracy theory, but then, hey, I'm Turkish, that's how we think.
Greeks have the same conspiracy.
Yeah, hey, yeah, we're all the same. Would you say that where things currently stand, Greece kind of holds at least one of the keys to getting this deal through? Because if Greece were to turn to, the Congress and say, look, we're having this conversation with Turkey. We believe that Turkey has sort of changed tack, wants a good relationship, has set aside that aggressive posturing that we witnessed in the Eastern Mediterranean. So don't worry about us. We're good. We're okay. Do you think that would help? Because after all, let's not forget that things between Turkey and Greece got even hairier after Mitsotakis went before the Congress, right, and said that he was concerned about Turkey's aggressive behavior, which of course really triggered Erdogan. And things went rapidly.
Well, Erdogan says it triggered him, but if you look at, and the stats are out there, if you look at the 4-month period prior to Prime Minister Mitsotakis' speech and compare it year on year, compared to the same 4-month period in 2021, you see that the escalation had already started. In fact, interestingly enough, we can date the escalation to Greece's signing with the United States of an updated mutual defense and cooperation agreement, which was at the end of 2021, October 2021. So the escalation almost started immediately after, and it actually fits into this narrative that we heard a lot of, especially during the election in Turkey, of the U.S. as the main enemy, not Greece. Erdogan, in fact, throughout allusions of Greece is a stuntman in someone else's play, right? So this anti-American sentiment, and of course, think about how critical the MDCA and the US's kind of forward-leaning approach to new military or expanded military installations in Greece, how that may even change Turkey's strategy in that region. And one of the bases covered in his new mutual defense and cooperation agreement, Alexandroupolis, which everybody thought was going to be key, but nobody expected how fast, and Russia's war in Ukraine made Alexandroupolis truly the Suda of the North. So now the West lands weapons at Alexandroupolis and takes them up through Bulgaria and Romania into Ukraine. So this MDCA, this, and there are other bases. Suda has become expanded. In fact, Pompeo's last trip to the region as secretary, he announced the housing of the only marine expeditionary ship in the region at Suda. Lamia on mainland Greece has become one of the top listening stations, and hosts of U.S. helicopters that they winter in Greece.
So we have this Greece envy going on. But to get back to my point about, the thinking in Congress and the thinking in Athens, and whether,
could Greece, listen, if Greece says there is not a prospect for conflict within NATO, because I think this is the whole point. It's not this, as some people say, oh, the Greek lobby, whether it's Greek Americans or Greece. The prospect of a war within NATO is a far bigger existential threat to NATO than Sweden or Finland getting in or not getting in. All right. Sweden and Finland are well armed. Sweden and Finland Sweden is a European Union member, right? There's a collective defense provision for the EU as well. And I don't think Russia can't handle Ukraine. I don't know how it would handle a well-armed Sweden. But the threat of an accident, which would escalate quite quickly. And we can go back to the EMEA crisis in the 1990s. And let's put it this way, a few years ago, then U.S. Ambassador to Greece, today Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Diplomacy, Jeff Pyatt, was warning about an accident. They were, for a year, there were a lot of dogfights, mock dogfights in the Aegean between Greece and Turkey. And by the way, with a less experienced Air Force regimen in Turkey, because most of the Air Force was purged because of the after the coup. That's not a big area. That's a complicated area, especially since people are trying to navigate what is international waters, territorial airspace, expanded territorial airspace. So the prospect of an accident was higher than ever.
But here and now, at this juncture,
here and now, Greece would have to, if Greece got up and said, we feel well defended, we feel like there's guarantees, but Greece is not going to give that away just because Erdogan promised, right? Because last week we saw that he says, well, we never used F-16s against Greece, which already is a lie, and we won't. So a promise like that will not suffice.
What will it take, Andy? What will it take for Greece to tell, Menendez and his colleagues that, as far as Greece is concerned, there is no problem? And
I laid out, I think, as I laid out in the article, and I don't think it's only Greece's decision. I think Congress is looking at this itself. Let's remember the F-35 situation. The F-35s, the first F-35s, were legally transferred to Turkey. Turkey didn't behave. They were pulled back, right? I think the Congress wants to see a policy by the administration that if Turkey resumes its provocative behavior, its threat within NATO, that there are provisions, and it is a policy of the United States that this sale could stop, could be frozen, could be suspended. They'll let it go forward as long as there's some accountability, as I pointed out
So
in
you
the
want
article.
strings attached. There should be
Yeah,
strings
yeah,
attached.
absolutely. Strings attached. Of course, this sale will turn out, F-16s. It's not like going to your local Target and picking them up, picking F-16s off the shelf. These F-16s will be arriving in Turkey over a certain amount of time. The newest F-16s, the 40 brand new ones, there's a backlog. Turkey may have to wait
They're talking
until
about a
2020.
3-year period.
Well, I actually think 3 years may be the upgrade. The backlog for new ones could go all the way to 2028.
Well, that of course raises the question of whether Turkey would even be willing to wait that long and then in turn decide, oh, well, I'll go and buy some Russian planes. Who knows? But
so I actually think the Russian scenario is a complete red herring, because if they bought Russian planes, they would be completely out of any joint NATO exercises. NATO would not let them fly, would not let them participate in NATO exercises with the Russian thing. I think Turkey's probably most likely alternative would be British planes. But once again, this becomes a much more expensive proposition. Getting 80 upgrades is a lot cheaper than getting 80 new. And I also, we'll have to find somebody to do a deeper dive on this, but Turkey's platform for its own domestically produced jet is based on American technology. So I haven't seen yet the deep dive on this, but I would suspect that this would set their domestic production back too, if they were to switch completely away from the F-16s. But the Russian thing is a complete red herring. And let's put this, let's remind people, because it happened once when people thought it wouldn't, and a further Russian purchase would be yet another violation of CATSA, which when you're asking about Congress, that would just give people an excuse to pursue further sanctions.
Well, that's just, I was speculating. So let's move back to, reality here. And of course, the other piece here is that Greece wants F-35s. And my understanding is, as part of allaying concerns about Greece's security as threatened by Turkey, they're trying to synchronize the delivery of F-16s with the F-35s, and that the administration has informally notified Congress of both deals, and now this has to be formalized, but they won't formalize it until they're sure that it will go through, that both will go through. That's my understanding. So my final question, I guess, is this: do you think that it's impossible for it to go through unless Turkey goes first and ratifies Sweden's accession? And if it does, will that be enough?
Yeah, no. So let's start with that. It will not be enough. In terms of going first or sequencing, this is, I think you use a perfect term, synchronization. I think everybody will know what the deal is. It may happen in a matter of days or a matter of hours, but Sweden will have to go first. And by going first, and we don't mean you just started the process in Parliament, and probably it probably means Hungary has to approve Sweden as well at the same time. Now, the Hungarians of Vilnius were asking, hey, tell us when Turkey's going to approve, because we don't want to be last, right? But I think there's a special bromance between Erdogan and Orban, and I don't think people are counting out the possibility that Erdogan may say, I approve, but Orban is holding it up. So Sweden is going to have to go first, but Sweden is in the Sweden's accession is in the necessary but insufficient. And the longer Erdogan pulls this out, I think there's a lot of pressure right now for, don't give us this, you're waiting for your parliament. You switch to a presidential system so you could decide what parliament does or does not do yourself. There is a lot of pressure for him to bring parliament back to do this.
Okay, well, I said that was the final question, but I have just one last final
Sure,
question.
sure.
And so, when you say this, when you say it's not sufficient, are you guessing? Are you guessing that that's how the Congress will react, or is that your personal view?
No, the Congress has been quite clear about this. We've seen Senator Menendez has been clear about the conditions for lifting his hold. Congressman Meeks has mirrored that. Even Congressman McCall says, I want the F-35s for Greece and the F-16s. We've seen several members of Congress write this open letters to the administration and encourage their leaders. So in a bipartisan.
Okay, so if they get the F-35s,
I don't think I think the F-35s. So the F-35s again are necessary, but not necessarily insufficient.
So what more does Turkey need to do? What more does Turkey?
Well, I don't think it's Turkey as much as the administration is going to have to guarantee Congress that they will somehow react if Turkey resumes belligerence in the Aegean and the Eastern Mediterranean, specifically.
But what form would that guarantee take? And I mean, this administration could be voted out. How do you do that?
Sure, sure.
How do you do that?
Listen, again, we can look again at the example of the F-35s, right? There were provisions in that defense transfer agreement that provided for suspension or even cancellation in whole or in part. There would have to be a declaration that mirrors the last several readouts we've seen from the White House, that the stability in the Aegean is a priority. That's going to have to be negotiated between the administration and the respective foreign affairs committees. But I think it's going to have to be in the form of some type of guarantee directly to Congress. And like you said, if the administration decides to, or another administration decides to not enforce such a guarantee, having it a declared policy of the United States allows Congress to do exactly what it did in F-35s, right? Okay, we'll use the NDA or something else to stop the rest of this transfer. The F-35 was a contract. It started being, and as much as the Trump administration wants to say, well, we pulled Turkey out of the F-35, it's because Congress on a bipartisan basis was forced its hand. If Pompeo had not done it, there was an NDA amendment that was going to pass. So I think the F-35 precedent is instructive here. And I think memorializing in a defense transfer agreement or some type of written guarantee to the Foreign Relations Committee is what we are probably looking at.
Well, Andy, thank you so much for all of that. Fascinating conversation. And I hope you're enjoying your summer in Chicago. It's getting hot there, you say.
It's getting hot everywhere.
Yeah.
Have a cool rest of the summer.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks. And this brings us to the end of this week's On the Middle East. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Andy, and do tune in again for another episode of On the Middle East. Thank you and goodbye.